Hello and welcome to American Friction, the most authentic US politics podcast in the entire world. I'm Jacob Jarvis. Authenticity is a word we hear a lot in US politics, but what does it really mean? Well, unfortunately, in newspaper speak, it might just mean manly. Yep, that's right, another boost for men in America because they really just can't catch a break at the moment. Well, our guest today is a political correspondent for NPR and recently wrote a Substack post with the headline, When Authenticity Means Dudes, which we're going to discuss today. Danielle Kurtzleben, welcome to American Friction.
Hey, I'm really happy to be here.
Great to have you with us. Danielle, a tangent straight away here, but first thing I did want to ask you about was you came over to Britain when Trump visited recently.
Right.
It's always treated like a massive deal over here. Do people over in the US really care very much about us at the moment?
I'm in Washington, D.C., where there's definitely plenty of attention lavished on this, but here in D.C., anything involving the president gets all the attention in the world. In the rest of the country, I certainly doubt it. I think Americans are fascinated with Britain, especially with the royals. So, all the pomp and circumstance and the carriage rides, the parachute drop that the president got to see. People like the pictures, they like to watch, but as far as the substance of that trip, I don't think people were paying attention, especially given the recent killing of Charlie Kirk, especially given the drama over Jimmy Kimmel being suspended and then not. I think people have a lot more stuff that they're thinking about right now.
On to manliness in American politics, which is something I really wanted to dig into with you. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that manliness generally being well received in American politics isn't totally a new thing, but this dude obsession, when did you first begin to notice that?
This has been kind of a niche that I've reported on ever since Trump came on the stage in 2015, because he really made, as he does in so many areas, he really made the subtext text. He took the quiet part and made it very, very loud. You might recall in his first run for the presidency, he bragged about the size of his hands, wink, wink, on the debate stage.
Yeah.
He went on the Dr. Oz show and Dr. Oz talked about Trump's testosterone count. Trump talked about, he emasculated his opponents, calling them low energy jab, little Marco. So Trump really did a lot of that. Now, you're absolutely right that it's not new. Candidates, especially for the presidency, had been doing this for a long time, often in subtle ways, but not entirely. But so often candidates had something that they seemed to be self-consciously putting before the camera to show what kind of a guy they were. Like Barack Obama with playing basketball, or George W. Bush with his whole cowboy aesthetic. I mean, Ronald Reagan had that to some degree, too. This is just kind of what presidential candidates have done for quite a long time. And because men dominate everything, and because men have dominated American politics for such a long time, I think that masculinity has been the water we've been swimming in for so long that it was easy to ignore that or just think that's the way it is. But Trump made it so much louder, and especially the fact that his first time around, he was running against a woman. I think that really made it so much more visible that, wow, this guy really wants you to know what a man he is. And I think as a result of that, you've also had Democrats really grapple with, okay, what kind of men are we? What kind of men do we have on our side? And I think that's what's happening right now with the Democrats.
With American journalism, I'll be honest with you, it regularly baffles me when I look at the sort of style of American journalism versus British journalism is very different. And a lot of the time, it feels like people really love to add quite a lot of colour to their pieces. Even news pieces can have a lot of that sort of descriptive words. Is there a bit of a thing here that it basically feels like some journalists feel more comfortable writing about men and how men look, and perhaps they might just feel it would be weird if they wrote so much about how women looked, and so that creates a bit of this balanced off. I noticed, in your Substack, you wrote about how there were some candidates being described with their biceps and all this sort of thing, and I thought, well, but if you wrote about a female candidate's arms and limbs or whatever else, you would look very strange. So is some of this a sort of stylistic issue with American journalism?
I think that's quite possible. It's fascinating to hear about this from the UK perspective, because
Yeah.
the only lens that I am putting on it as an American is the gender lens, or I suppose the identity lens, because look, being straight, being white, being any number of those other things also factors into this. I think it is true that writing about women's looks is much more fraught. There are some journalists who have done it quite well, but often when journalists write about particular politicians, women politicians' manner of dress or how they present themselves, they often find themselves defending their journalism and defending why they're not sexist. For example, I have seen journalists talk about how Kyrsten Sinema, a former Democratic senator from Arizona, she dressed quite flamboyantly on the floor of the Senate. And it was hard to watch her for long without thinking about the very colorful clothes she wore. And it was certainly worthy of paying attention to. But it was definitely hard for journalists to cover that without coming across as somehow trivializing her by talking about her largely in terms of how she looked. Kristi Noem, our DHS secretary right now, also, you've seen some journalists try to talk about how she presents herself. But again, that is very difficult without feeling like you're tipping into talking about their looks. But this, again, any conversation we have about this gets into the difference with how men and women are treated in a patriarchy, quite frankly. I am always hesitant to bring that buzzword in, but it's true, because when we're talking about a candidate showing off his biceps, the candidate we're talking about here is a guy named Graham Plattner. He is a Democratic Senate candidate from Maine, and he is an oyster farmer. And so the context in which they're talking about his biceps is not him showing off and trying to look super hot, at least not first and foremost. He's, lifting his crates of this and that. It's functional. And so I do wonder if you had a woman candidate who was a farmer or was herself an oyster farmer, if she was being functional and like showing off her pipes while she's lifting things, I am curious how a journalist would cover that. But I think it's pretty true that we have so few candidates that we have been able to talk about in that way. That is just not how women candidates present themselves for a variety of reasons.
One thing I find strange with Kristi Noem is she presents in this gun-wielding, gun-toting sort of quite masculine way in one way, but she is also very feminine at the same time. Mm-hmm. Why do Republicans seem to be able to feel more comfortable towing that line and juggling it in a way that the Democrats, perhaps don't seem to be able to forefront? It just feels like to me that the Republicans do have quite a lot of sort of women being incredibly feminine, but somehow being masculine and MAGA too. What's going on there?
There is so much going on there, and I doubt I'll be able to get into all of it. But for a while there, after Donald Trump was first elected, I covered the wave of women candidates, specifically Democrats, that jumped into elections in the 2018 midterms. And around the same time, I was watching, okay, all these Democratic women are coming in. What are Republican women doing? And I talked to a Republican pollster and strategist at the time who pointed out that Republican women in their ads at the time were disproportionately often showing themselves holding a firearm, often a large firearm. We're talking like a hunting rifle, for example.
Yeah.
That became a way of signaling, I am a woman running as a Republican, but I understand you, Republican voters, because first of all, Republican voters are just more men. They are majority men. And so I think partially the idea there is, I'm a woman, but you don't have to be scared of me, quite frankly, because I get you.
Yeah.
But besides that, part of it is a cultural difference between the Republican and Democratic side, right? So if you're a woman running on the Republican side, on the one hand, you might be signaling to women voters, hey, guess what? Women run Republican too. Maybe you can vote for me. But along with that, there's a whole culture on the Republican side of, yes, of guns, but of traditional femininity. And we've seen this come out in some of these women's gatherings that the MAGA side has had since Trump has come into office. And there is, quite frankly, a look of the MAGA woman that has been discussed in American journalism, as having that long hair, as, being made up, as being very, very feminine in your presentation. So I think it's a way of trying to cover all the bases on the Republican side, right? Of signaling, yes, I can do this gun culture thing. I can do the manly side of things, but also I am a capital W woman. The Democratic side is complicated as well, but in a very different way. On the Democratic side, what's been notable to me, not to get on a tangent, but is so often the women on the Democratic side that get lots of attention tend to be women who have been in the military or have been in intelligence, women who can present this steely, kind of no-nonsense, tough as nails exterior.
Yeah.
I think what is going on, to sum up what I'm saying, is that the candidates on either side are trying to signal to their voters, I am one of you, while also signaling to maybe on-the-fence voters, hey, I can appeal to you too. So if you're a Democratic woman, like Abigail Spanberger, she's running for governor in Virginia right now. She was formerly in the CIA. Part of the appeal that she is trying to telegraph, I think, is, yes, I'm a woman, I'm a mom. I've done the whole, I put my kids through scouts thing, but it's also like, I am not the stereotypical woman, for better or worse. And what this means is that all of this, even if you're fighting stereotypes, means you're still kind of trafficking in stereotypes at the same time.
Yeah, with the stereotype side, one thing I found really interesting in your piece was the discussion around the reporting of men going about and doing their work and having maybe their boxers showing or whatever. And you write about, well, imagine if we went around and filmed a woman doing things that may be considered more traditional women's work and doing housework, and she had a pair of leggings on and her underwear out. That would cause scandal. People would be absolutely baffled by it. Like, it would be so viral, I feel like, if that happened. Is it, and I'll use the patriarchy buzzword this time, is it just that America doesn't necessarily value women's work, or some of the traditional gender roles in America, which seem to be deeply entrenched, they don't really respect it when it's put on a sort of public platform in that way?
I think it's that to some degree. But I said this in that piece as well. If that woman came out and ran for office, I would be here for it. Now, I mean,
completely,
without betraying my political beliefs by any means here, but I mean, I think there's plenty of women who, if they saw a fellow woman come out and run for office, drinking her Diet Coke, wearing her old yoga pants, just her hair kind of messy. Like, I think there's plenty of women who would be like, yeah, she gets me. But the question is, does that win men over? Because one thing that we do know is that because men are dominant, I think, I'm theorizing here, I think that there's a certain sort of aspirationalness to them. Like, the men are cool.
Okay.
Like, the guy who can be that guy, the beer-swigging, sports ball-loving guy, is, he's fun. He's cool. He's fun to hang out with. I think there is the question of the lady in her yoga pants who, with a crying toddler on her hip or whatever, is she considered as cool by as many voters as that guy? I'm not sure. But I think also here, I've long just wondered if this is a question of risk aversion among the political sorts. Like, put a woman out there like that. Let's see how she does. Well, we haven't seen her really, at least not that I can think of in recent memory. But I think if you did put a very unvarnished woman out there, I think you would have some people scandalized, but I think you'd also have some people electrified. I just don't know what the balance would be.
So if you could be any type of shark, and there's a lot of sharks in the world, I don't even know them all, what shark would you be?
Spy shark. Access all areas.
What if I were to tell you, I've got another shark to introduce you to?
I am extremely Finterested.
Well, I'm glad you're interested because it's called Surfshark.
Hell yeah.
Surfing and sharks, a combination that people famously like.
I do.
It's not really a shark
So
either.
you lied.
I am a liar. It's a cybersecurity service. So if I had lied to you online, you'd never know because I'd be so secure. Surfshark, it can provide you with a VPN, and VPNs, they're virtual private networks. They let you browse the internet, sort of go around, swim around like a shark.
Yeah.
Watching content from other countries as if you were there, but you are not.
That would be extremely handy for us
Pray tell me why.
because we search for a lot of weird stuff when we're researching American friction, don't we?
Yeah, when I've had to search things like Donald Trump boob drawing, you know, you want to do that without things like snoopers and trackers.
Snoopers and trackers.
Snooping and tracking you.
Snooping and
'cause
tracking.
I don't like any of that. So yeah, Surfshark will keep you safe from all of them. So Chris, on all of that, what should our listeners do?
They should.
They should.
They should.
They should.
They should.
They really should.
Take control of their online security. And I'll tell you how. They can try Surfshark today
Wow.
and enjoy their 30-day money-back guarantee.
Oh.
Simply go to surfshark.com/Amfric or use the code Amfric at checkout to get four
Wow.
extra months of Surfshark VPN. Surfshark is helping American friction to keep going. So if you need a VPN, that's you. If you need a VPN, choose the ones that support your faves. And that's us.
Surfshark. I've got a slight tangent question, which is unfortunately a very depressing one.
Oh, great.
On the risk aversion of the political side of it, is there perhaps some consideration that, because American society to me does feel like, when I look in, to be, as a very, very male dominated, is there concern that perhaps in a household, the man is most likely to be the most ardent and strong political force within it? So, for example, if you can win over the father, the husband, they may have more influence on the way their wife, their children, if they're of age to vote, will vote. So therefore, they are a stronger person for you to win over than winning over the mother, because perhaps the mother might not have so much influence over a broad spectrum of the people close to her.
There may be some of that. I mean, I'm certain there is to some degree. I'm not sure how big it is. We saw, I don't know if you recall this, in the very last couple of weeks before the presidential election last year, the Kamala Harris campaign, or perhaps it was some groups close to her, put out some ads telling women in pretty stark terms, like, you don't have to vote how your husband votes. That voting booth is private. You can do how you want. And there was a lot of debate in the U.S., which, quite frankly, I don't think has been settled, as to how effective that was. Did women take that to heart, or did they feel condescended to? I think there was a mix of that to some degree. So you may be right that is part of it. I do think, though, that a big part of it is also, to go back to what I was saying before, is simply that I think men have, maybe to put a different way, men have a broader appeal than women do, is my feeling. I think there is a sense in which women are seen as, they're not the default, right? They're a specialty candidate. There's something new about them. Even though we're a majority of the population, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's like an additional hump, maybe, for some voters to get over, that this isn't just your standard vanilla guy candidate with all these additional attributes to him. First and foremost, a woman candidate is a woman. And so it seems as if, whether it's voters or journalists or political strategists, it's almost as if they're confronted with a woman candidate and they have to grapple with that first, as opposed to whatever else she might do. For example, is she an oyster farmer? Is she a house cleaner? Is she a doctor? Who knows? Doesn't matter. She's a woman. I think that is, even at this late date in our politics, being a woman is still a bit unusual.
This dude problem feels like it's been pushed forward and accelerated by the Republicans. But it seems to me that it's a problem for Democrats. It's a problem that Democrats are struggling to wrangle with and to be able to compete with. when it comes to it. It's part of that because of this reliance on the sort of consultancy class who seem to have this mindset of, well, this was how we won before, so that's how we're always going to win. And our Democrats who are struggling with this, and I don't know, perhaps the media as well, just stuck maybe around about a decade or so ago and expecting that that's how they're going to succeed again.
I think that's quite possible. I think that there has been some movement on, okay, what does an authentic candidate look like who is not focus grouping themselves to death, right? Or perhaps who is just not doing authenticity in quite as gendered of a way. I mean, you've seen this quite a bit on the left. I'm not sure how the politics and the gender part of this interact, so I'm not quite going to go there, but I'm thinking Zohran Mamdani running for mayor in New York, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, representative in New York, Bernie Sanders to some degree. I mean, Bernie Sanders was certainly not out there, doing push-ups the way that RFK Jr. and Pete Hegseth are, right?
Yeah.
Those are three candidates who very much, you get the sense, even if it's put on, authenticity is not always authenticity. Authenticity is sometimes an act, but they're able to at least portray authenticity in a way that does not feel as gendered, where it's not about, if you're the men, how strong and dominant you are, how much, the beer, the sports, all of that. If you're a woman, it's not, about being a mom. AOC is not a mom. It is not about being a provider or a carer. It's just about, here's my beliefs. So I think there are some candidates who have been able to do this. And I'm sure there are plenty more I'm not thinking of, who are not on the lefter end of things. I do think that on the Democratic side, more to the question you were asking, there's just this grappling with, okay, we on the Democratic side are more progressive in our way of thinking about gender, right? Trump won all of these young men, and he won these young men by being very non-progressive on gender, by really presenting manhood as this ideal. And not only that, but, by having been accused many times of sexual harassment, misconduct, assault, by all number of things. And he won all these people over anyway. So I think Democrats have been grappling with, we want to win men over. We want to show what kind of men we can have, but we don't want to be that kind of man that won all of these men over. How do we do that? And they're trying. You saw it last year with Tim Walz to some degree, the fun-loving football coach who could fix a car. And plenty of Democrats fell in love with him, but you get the sense that Democrats are saying, well, that's not enough because clearly we lost.
Yeah.
So the real question then is, to what degree do Democrats want to rely on men? And also, we should make this very clear here. To what degree are voters won over by overt displays of manhood or scared away by overt displays of womanhood or vice versa? That is not the sole way voters are making their decisions, of course.
Is some of the issue here the continual and increasing nationalization of politics in the US? Because, for example, Zohran Mamdani is someone that I look to, and I think he does seem pretty manly, the way and some of the ways he engages, and he seems like he's on stage with Wu-Tang Clan, and I really look at him, and when you consistently hear, oh, where are the Democrats' answers to Joe Rogan? And then you see Mamdani looking really cool on stage with Wu-Tang Clan. I go, well, kind of there you go. This guy looks like he's on the path to that. But he's in New York. I'm in London. I'm like a city person, so that maybe appeals to me. Is that part of the issue? Is that Mamdani maybe doesn't look masculine to someone in, I don't know, rural Alabama or wherever else, but he looks like a bit of a sort of bro almost to me through a New York framing, but elsewhere, perhaps they consider him a complete wimp. And is that where Democrats are sort of struggling there, is to find the bro of all bros that sort of fits every state, if you know what I mean?
That is an excellent point, because you're absolutely right. It's not that Mamdani is doing this all gender-free by any stretch. But yeah, you're right that like being, buddies with Wu-Tang Clan is not something that I think people, the guys from, I'm from Iowa, for example, that the guys from rural Iowa care about, right? And this gets at another thing, which is that the kind of standard ideal dude in American politics for so long has been a white guy in a barn jacket, something kind of khaki colored, looking like he could go lift a hay bale at any moment. Maybe from middle America, but it's not about, being in the city. It is often about being rural. And all these traits that I'm talking to you about right now are very Republican at this point. So this is why this is such a sticky issue for Democrats to deal with, is that the rugged man at this point is so MAGA coded, and MAGA is so rugged man coded. I mean, both and, right? So if you're Democrats, to what degree can you and should you chase those votes? And how do you win those votes? And do you win those votes by trying to play that part, by trying to run men who are authentically like that, but just happen to have progressive politics? Or do you win those votes some other way? Do you find another route? What seems to be happening right now is that Democrats in some of these races, we've talked about Graham Plattner in Maine, but in Iowa, where I'm from, we have a couple of guys running for, Senate, governor, who also fit this bill. A former semi-pro baseball player named J.D. Scholten, who is a fixture on the Iowa political scene. These guys are kind of held up by Democrats, sometimes in multiple cycles, as the guys that we are pinning our hopes on. So I'm curious, to what degree does that actually work? And should it not, does that mean Democrats change their tack? I don't know.
With all of this, this is another really big question that I'm sure you're going to say there's a lot going on there with it. But MAGA does feel, like you say, really, it's trying to be rugged. It's all about camo. It's all about guns. It's a very masculine world. Donald Trump, draft dodger, wears a shit ton of makeup every day, doesn't look particularly like he'd be great at any sport I can imagine, to be honest. And very, very much a city person, like so defined by that.
Right. Has never lifted a hay bale, right?
Exactly. And he's imagine seeing Trump wearing Carhartt. It would look so odd. Yet he is the head of the movement. How has he so successfully managed to dodge so much of this gender scrutiny? Because he really doesn't feel like what should feel like a typical masculine rugged male to me, yet he totally gets away with it and gets to lead this weird cult of masculinity.
Yes, and this, boy oh boy, have people, look, I have been reporting on masculinity in politics for years, and the number of times that people have raised this to me, like, yes, it is absolutely true that there's plenty about Donald Trump that is not, that is right, the opposite of all these guys that we're talking about. And I think a big part of Trump's appeal is his anger. And I mean, there's the thing that you heard people say over and over, especially in 2016, but even after that, where people would say, I would ask a voter, what do you like about Trump? And they would say, well, he says what he's thinking. He says what we're all thinking. He's not afraid to say it. And even if you would ask voters, what don't you like about Trump? They would say, well, I wish he wouldn't tweet so much. But I would argue that, no, the fact that he tweets things that kind of make you uncomfortable is probably part of his appeal anyway. I think that Trump's willingness to be brash, angry, insulting, even verbally abusive is part of which are not things that a woman candidate could ever get away with.
Yeah.
You talked about letting a woman's underwear peek out of her, her yoga leggings. Like, yeah, that might be scandalous enough. But if a woman got out there and was that angry, that insulting to her political opponents, I think that would cause an absolute riot.
Yeah, Trump would have come up with the nickname Hysterical Hillary
Absolutely.
quicker than anything, wouldn't he? He'd have been straight out there.
Yeah, and I think that would be true on the Republican or Democratic side. Women are so constrained in how they can present themselves, and Trump has broken so many constraints and has been quite unconstrained. I do think that his anger is quite a big part of it. I mean, one thing I think a lot about, because we should get at the fact also that race plays into this as well.
Yeah.
During a White House Correspondents' Dinner speech, during his time in office, Barack Obama, I don't know if you remember this, brought out a guy he called Luther the Anger Translator. And it was Keegan-Michael Key, the comedian and actor. And Keegan-Michael Key just kind of walked around and hovered behind Obama. And Obama would say something very anodyne like, I think we really need to address climate change. And then Keegan-Michael Key would come up to the microphone and scream like, the world is burning. What is wrong with you people? I mean, a really clever way of Obama getting at the fact that he is a black man could not express anger because it would freak people out, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And I think that Donald Trump, in being a man and being white, has much more room to express that anger. And he expressed the anger and the unease that a lot of people, especially white men, felt post-Obama, while having Hillary Clinton be such a strong political force, and quite frankly, for quite a while, being the presumptive next president to a lot of people. A lot of people thought she would win. I think that also scared a lot of people. There's one more really important thing, which is that when it comes to voters, this is not just about men voters like Trump, women voters like Kamala, Hillary, etc.
Yeah.
It's about gender attitudes. The big divide is not just about gender. It's about how you feel about gender. And on the Republican side, and especially among MAGA people, there is so much of a feeling of it is good and right for men to not be soft, to be tough, to be rugged. And we've seen this a little bit since the Charlie Kirk Memorial, where Erica Kirk talked about being your husband's helper. And there is a very strong feeling among evangelical white women that, the woman is the helper, that the man is the head of the household. This is all part of the gender attitude package on the Republican side. Democrats have much more complicated but also egalitarian views of gender. Again, broadly speaking. So this is all of which is to say that this is what makes it so hard to generalize about all of this, because it's not just about how you present to the world in your gender. It's also about what you believe about gender.
Do you think there's much hope of America shifting on from this dude funk it's in? And if so, what do you think the route away from it? Or is it just, I don't know, probably generational, and we need a few more generations of people who are slowly getting away from gender norms, and that might change things, which a little bit bleak for us all right now, but hey, maybe in 50 years things will be great.
Oh man, I don't know. There's the personal feelings. Look, as a woman, I think like, God, that would be cool. It really would.
Yeah.
But look, if I'm being cold and hard-nosed about it, demographically, perhaps. Perhaps there's some increased hope for women in that women are increasingly more educated than men. And insofar as education helps lead a person to higher elected office, that might just mean that there is indirectly some gains for women in the Senate and the House, state level governors, and maybe eventually the presidency, perhaps. But it is also true that, again, the two sides' attitudes about gender are so far apart that any gains that women make in terms of elected office are going to be lopsided. As of right now, Democrats just stand to elect more women than Republicans do because like the women's pool is bigger. There's plenty more women who are Democratic. There is the question, though, of, maybe a conservative woman is the one who's going to break the glass ceiling first when it comes to the presidency. Maybe if a woman on the Republican side is conservative enough and can make people on the Republican side comfortable enough, is she the one who will eventually make Americans feel comfortable altogether with a woman president, or at least not weirded out by it? That's quite possible. I mean, I've heard Margaret Thatcher used as an example over here as, she did it. And I realize a parliamentary system is different, but that maybe that is analogous to here, that a sort of iron lady here in the U.S. is what will eventually make that happen.
Gosh, the idea of an American Margaret Thatcher is maybe too overwhelming for me to consider.
I don't want to get over my skis. My knowledge of Margaret Thatcher is pretty thin.
Yeah, I'd say not a huge fan, but yeah, look, sure, great. She was great for gender representation. That's probably about as positive as I can muster around her. But yeah, well, Danielle, thanks so much for getting into all of that with me. I'm sorry for very many depressing questions, but I very much enjoyed the conversation anyway.
Hey, this is my job. It was good talking to you.
Yeah. Nice to speak to you. And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, if you enjoy what we do and enjoy me having conversations such as this one with Danielle, you can back us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/American Friction. If you can't back us financially, we totally get it, but please do go rate, review, and subscribe wherever you're listening to the podcast. Thank you for listening to American Friction.